Okay, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be, like, completely honest with me.
Oh boy. Okay.
Have you ever sat down to work? I mean, really sat down, fully motivated, coffee in hand, ready to crush a project. And then you open your laptop and ping,
Mm-hmm.
a single notification.
Mm-hmm.
You check it, maybe you scroll for just a second, and then suddenly you look up, 20 minutes have gone by, and you're reading a Wikipedia article about the history of toaster ovens.
Only every other day. It feels like the defining struggle of our time, doesn't it?
It really does.
We used to talk about the attention economy like it was this sort of neutral marketplace where we traded time for content. But the research we're looking at today, it paints a much grimmer picture.
How so?
It suggests we aren't living in an economy anymore. We're living in an attention war.
A war is exactly what it feels like.
Mm.
And honestly, it feels like we're losing. That is exactly why I was so desperate to get into this specific stack of research today.
Me too.
We are doing a deep dive into mastering attention, a guide to focus in a distracted world. And let me tell you, when I first picked this up, I was expecting a lecture. Put your phone away, eat your vegetables.
Right. A scolding. But it's not that. It reads more like a survival manual for your brain.
It really does.
Yeah.
And what's so fascinating is how it frames the problem. It's not a personal failure, which I think is how most of us feel when we lose focus, but a systemic issue we have to navigate.
Yeah.
The source is just perfect for that learner persona we talk about, someone who wants to reclaim their mental space from all the digital chaos, but doesn't want to move to a cave and go off grid to do it.
Right, because the Wi-Fi in a cave is terrible, and I need my streaming services.
Yeah.
So let's unpack this. The guide starts by breaking down distraction into two camps, and this was my first, aha moment.
Okay.
I always thought distraction was just my phone buzzing or a loud noise. But the text says it's way more nuanced.
Much more. The text distinguishes between external distractions and internal distractions.
External is exactly what you just mentioned. The environment, notifications, the jackhammer outside, the clutter on your desk. Those are the things happening to you.
The sensory inputs.
Exactly. They pull you away.
Yeah.
But the internal ones, that's the tricky part.
Right. That sounded a lot more insidious to me.
Because it is. That's the stuff happening inside your own skull. The wandering thoughts, the stress, the anxiety.
Oh, I know that one.
You know that moment when you're in a perfectly quiet room, phone is off, door is locked, but your brain suddenly decides to replay an awkward conversation from a party 3 years ago?
Intimately, yes. It's like my brain waits for the silence just to scream at me.
That's internal distraction. And the source highlights a specific demographic here, young adults, that roughly 18 to 25 range. It mentions that for this group, the sheer immediacy of information has actually changed how they read and process everything.
The text used the word skimming, right?
Yes, and this is a critical point. It describes a shift to a skimming habit.
So what does that mean exactly?
Well, because so much information is coming at us so fast, headlines, tweets, TikTok captions, the brain adapts. It gets really good at scanning for keywords and the gist of things instead of deep reading.
So we're trading depth for breadth.
We are, and the result is it's eroding our capacity for sustained attention. We're literally training our brains to be superficial.
That is terrifying. But it's a perfect segue to the Holy Grail concepts this guide promises. If skimming is the sickness, the cure is deep work and flow states.
Exactly. Deep work is the antidote, and flow is the reward. But, and this is a big but, we can't get there without first addressing the elephant in the room, or rather, the supercomputer in our pocket.
Let's get into that. Segment 1, the digital battleground. The source material does not pull punches here. It basically says social media is designed to fracture our attention.
It's not an accident, it's a feature.
A feature? Wow.
It's engineering. The text talks about the psychology behind this, specifically the variable reward schedule. It's the same mechanic in a slot machine.
Okay, explain that.
When you pull down to refresh your feed, you don't know what you're going to get. Most of the time, it's nothing. But sometimes it's a message, a piece of exciting news.
And that uncertainty is what hooks us.
Precisely. The unpredictability spikes your dopamine. It keeps that loop firing. But then the guide points out another layer, the psychological trap of social comparison.
The everyone is living a better life than me feeling you get while scrolling at 2 in the morning.
That's the one. And that emotional response triggers internal distraction anxiety, inadequacy, which makes it even harder to focus on whatever you're supposed to be doing. And then there's this concept of attention fragmentation.
I loved this term. It sounds like a sci-fi weapon. But it explains so much about my daily fatigue.
It's basically what happens when you try to multitask. The source is very clear. Multitasking is a myth.
It's a myth.
You're not actually doing two things at once, you're just rapid switching your attention between them. And every time you switch from your report to your texts and back, you get what's called attention residue.
Attention residue.
Yeah.
So, like, part of my brain is still stuck on the text message, even while I'm trying to write the report.
Exactly. You are never fully present because your attention is fractured into these tiny, unusable shards. You end the day feeling exhausted, but you haven't actually done any real deep thinking.
So what's the solution? The guide suggests digital minimalism. Now, does this mean I have to buy a flip phone and move to that cabin?
Thankfully, no. Digital minimalism, as it's defined here, isn't about deleting everything. It's about curating your digital life.
Okay, curating. I like that.
It's about intentionality. The goal is just to reduce the noise so you can actually hear your own thoughts.
The guide gives some really specific strategies. The
Yeah.
one that stood out to me was the notification purge.
It's the low-hanging fruit. The rule of thumb in the text is turn off non-essential alerts. If it's not a direct message from a human being that needs immediate action, you probably don't need it buzzing in your pocket.
News alerts, likes, all that stuff.
All of it. It can wait.
Another one I liked was tech-free zones. This feels like something I could actually do.
This is huge for environmental design. You designate specific physical locations where devices are just forbidden. The bedroom is a classic one.
Right, get the phone out of the room where you sleep.
But even just having a specific reading corner where your phone never goes can train your brain. You sit there and your brain goes, okay, we're in the chair. This is focus time, not school time.
And then there's curating feeds. This goes back to that social comparison trap.
Right. Unfollow accounts that make you feel bad or distracted. Follow ones that inspire you. You're the editor of your own media consumption. If you're trying to focus, why let content into your brain that just creates clutter?
That's a great way to put it. It is hard to disconnect, though. You feel that phantom buzz in your pocket.
That's withdrawal, basically. But the advice here is that by dialing down that external noise, you create the space for what we talked about earlier. Deep work.
So let's unpack that. We've cleared the digital clutter. Now we want to get in the zone. The source references Cal Newport's definition of deep work.
Yes, he defines it as the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. It's the difference between being busy answering emails, Slack messages, all that shallow work, and being truly productive.
Productive on something that actually requires brain power.
And creates value. And the ultimate version of this is the flow state. I think I've felt this by accident before, usually when I'm doing something creative.
What is it exactly?
Flow is fascinating. It's that state where the challenge of a task perfectly matches your skill level. You get so immersed, you lose track of time, you forget to eat, your sense of self just vanishes.
That's where the high creativity happens.
It is, but you can't just snap your fingers and be in flow.
Right.
No, it requires a distraction-free environment. You have to engineer your space for it.
The guide gets really specific on environmental design. Let's talk lighting. I didn't realize how much this mattered.
It matters a lot. Our biology is tied to light. The text suggests natural light is best get near a window if you can. But if you're working late, you want to avoid blue light. It messes with your sleep cycle.
It keeps you in a state of high alert.
Exactly. Warm LED bulbs are better in the evening. And what about sound?
I'm someone who usually needs total silence, but the text suggests that's not always the best move.
Well, total silence can be fragile. A car door slams outside and it sounds like a bomb.
True.
So the text suggests soundscapes. Instrumental music, brown noise, nature sounds, they can mask those disruptive noises, and it strongly recommends noise-canceling headphones.
Not just for the sound, right? It mentioned another reason.
As a signal to the world and to yourself. When you put them on, you are hanging a do not disturb sign on your brain.
I like that. And finally, clutter. My desk is currently, let's call it, lived in.
The link is direct. Physical clutter leads to mental clutter. A tidy desk reduces the visual stimuli competing for your attention.
Okay, so we've curated our phone, fixed the lights, cleaned the desk. But then I sit down and my mind starts racing.
The internal distraction.
It's back to haunt me.
This is where the toolkit shifts from the environment to your own mind. You can't solve internal noise with external tools. You need mindfulness and grounding.
The text offers some specific breathing exercises. And I love that it frames these not just as spiritual practices, but as physiological resets.
That's a crucial distinction. These are mechanics for your nervous system. The first one is box breathing.
Right. Walk us through that.
It's very simple. You inhale for a count of 4, hold that breath for 4, exhale for 4, hold the empty lungs for 4, and you just repeat that cycle.
Why does that work?
It regulates your autonomic nervous system. It forces your body out of fight or flight, where anxiety lives, and into rest and digest. You
Yeah.
physically cannot stay in a high-stress state if you're breathing like that. It's a biological override.
There's also the 4-7-8 technique.
Similar idea, but specifically for reducing anxiety. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, and a long exhale for 8. That long exhale is key. It triggers the relaxation response.
Okay, but what about when you're really spiraling, like panic levels of distraction? The guide mentions the 5 senses exercise.
This is a grounding technique for acute distraction.
Mhm.
If your mind is racing, you stop and you physically identify 5 things you can see,
Okay.
4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste.
It sounds so simple, but I imagine it just forces your brain to stop worrying about the abstract and log on to physical reality.
That's it, exactly. You can't worry about the future when you're hyper-focused on the texture of your jeans or the hum of the fridge. It brings you back to now.
And from now, you can get back to work.
Then there's this idea of mindful observation.
This one sounds harder.
It takes practice. It's about changing your relationship with your thoughts. So instead of grabbing onto every distraction that pops in your head, you just observe it. Visualize them as clouds passing.
So I see the thought, oh, I need to do laundry, and I just let it float by.
You acknowledge it, but you don't invite it to dinner.
I like that. Okay, let's talk about structure. We're calm, we're grounded. How do we manage the actual hours in the day? The guide brings up a classic, the Pomodoro technique.
It's a classic for a reason. 25 minutes of intense focus, 5-minute break.
Why does this work so well? Is it just the timer?
It's 2 things. First, it creates a false urgency. 25 minutes isn't long, so you hustle. That combats procrastination. Second, it prevents burnout. But, and this is the part most people miss, the text adds a crucial detail about the break.
What's that?
What you do during that 5-minute break matters. Do not check social media.
Guilty. I almost always grab my phone.
Most of us do. But if you switch from deep work to high stimulation scrolling, you undo the mental rest. You're giving your brain a dopamine bath, not a break.
So what should you do?
Stare at a wall, stretch, breathe, get water,
Mm.
keep the brain in a low stimulation state so it can actually replenish for the next round.
Boring breaks are productive breaks. Got it. The guide also mentions prioritization, like the Eisenhower matrix.
Right, just categorizing tasks into urgent versus important. It helps you avoid the trap of just doing the loudest task, like a nagging email, instead of the most valuable one.
And for visual people, there's mind mapping.
Just getting everything out of your head onto paper to see the connections and reduce that feeling of being overwhelmed. And finally, for time, flexible scheduling.
Which is about self-awareness.
Exactly. Know your peak productivity hours. If you're a morning person, protect those hours with your life. Don't schedule meetings then. That's your prime cognitive time. Spend it on deep work.
Okay, we're entering the final segment, and honestly, it's the one I usually neglect because I think of my brain as like a computer. The biology of focus.
A common mistake. You can't run high-performance software on broken hardware. That's the brain-body connection. If your body is tired or dehydrated, your focus will suffer.
Let's start with something basic, hydration.
The stat here is staggering. The brain is about 75% water. Even slight dehydration, we're talking just feeling a little thirsty, calls concentration, short-term memory.
So if you're feeling foggy at 2 p.m., it might just be a glass of water.
It very well could be. And then there's the focus diet. The source gets specific about what to eat for your brain.
Not just eat healthy.
No, it highlights fatty fish, salmon, trout for the omega-3s. Those are literally the building blocks of your brain cells.
And what about for people who hate fish?
Leafy greens, spinach, kale, they're packed with antioxidants. Berries, specifically blueberries for memory and communication between brain cells. And nuts and seeds, almonds, walnuts for vitamin E.
So a salmon salad with blueberries and walnuts is basically rocket fuel for the brain.
Essentially, yes, you're giving your brain the chemical resources it needs to function.
And we can't talk biology without exercise. I know I should go to the gym, but tell me why it helps me focus on a spreadsheet.
It's the chemistry. Exercise releases dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin, the same chemicals we're trying to get from our phones, but in a healthy, sustained way.
Plus, it improves sleep.
Which is everything. The guide notes that without good sleep, none of the other techniques matter. Sleep is when the brain literally cleans itself.
So we've covered a massive amount of ground here. Digital traps, environmental hacks, breathing techniques, time management, diet. It feels comprehensive, but also, let's be real, maybe a little overwhelming to start all at once.
And that's why the end of the source material focuses on habit formation. You don't do all this tomorrow. You don't wake up as a Zen monk.
It references that science of habit formation, right? The cycle.
The cue, routine, reward cycle. The advice is to start small. Don't try to meditate for an hour. Start with 10 minutes. Don't overhaul your whole diet. Just drink more water.
Build the neural pathway first.
Prove to yourself you can do it, because if you try to change everything at once, you'll fail and just go back to scrolling.
So if we synthesize all of this, everything we've discussed, the journey isn't really about productivity, is it?
No, it's about agency. We can't eliminate all distractions. The world is noisy, but we can control our environment, our body, and our response to that noise.
It's about taking the power back.
It is. Mastering attention isn't just about getting a promotion. It's about claiming ownership of your life. It's about deciding what gets to occupy your mind.
That leads us to the provocative thought the guide leaves us with. In a world that is so aggressively designed to distract us, the ability to focus isn't just a productivity hack. It's the ultimate superpower.
And I would argue the greatest form of self-care. Because when you choose to focus, you are honoring your own time and your own potential. You're saying this moment matters and I am going to be present for it.
I love that. Honoring your own time. Well, on that note, maybe the first step for everyone listening is to turn this off, put the phone in a drawer, and just breathe for 5 minutes.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks for diving deep with us. See you next time.